think, oddly, I know we got a semi-decent gag out of it yesterday by suggesting that if you told everyone they were blue, then that weird crossover between Brexit ultras and sort of faux libertarian anti-vaccine passporters would be easily solved. Just tell them that they're blue. They're blue. The vaccine passports are blue. Oh, well, in that case, I definitely want one. Apart from that, I don't think passport is helpful, but it's probably too late, is it now, to change? Johnson yesterday sort of snuck it out in the middle of his pronouncements. In fact, as the Times says, buried in the middle of his statement on the roadmap out of lockdown. So Monday, not yesterday. After all, this is the Times leader today. Ministers had spent the past few weeks insisting that they had no intention of setting up a system of vaccine passports, regardless of what private companies might do. Nadine Zahawi, the vaccines minister, said that such plans would be wrong. Even Downing Street officials appear to have been blindsided by the Prime Minister's U-turn. And Marcus Rashford had absolutely nothing to do with it, which is a rare occurrence, isn't it? And I could be wrong, and I know many of you hate it when I endeavour to offer even the thinnest of olive branches towards this appalling clown car of a government in the context of the arguably the worst response in the world to the coronavirus pandemic. Nick had another caller today. So why don't you ring me, lads, to tell me what a bang-up job he's doing as the head of the government that's got arguably the worst response in the world to a pandemic that's affected pretty much every country, including countries considerably poorer than us. Give me a ring and tell me what a bang-up job he's doing. We can pick over the bones of it. We can have a look at the facts. We can focus upon the reality. But instead, I found myself giggling, actually, at the idea of what would bad look like if people think this is good. But anyway, I don't think that this is a blameworthy U-turn. I think this is just an evolution of thinking. The problem, as ever, is that they go all in on what they say on a Monday, which makes it look a bit silly and embarrassing, humiliating, of course, if Marcus Rashford gets involved, when they do the polar opposite on a Tuesday. I don't know how we would feel if they were a little bit more honest and cautious, because I'm a massive hypocrite, as you probably know. I spent all of last year saying what we need is something solid and dependable. I'm nostalgic for the days of dullness, and I caught myself at the end of last week giving Keir Starmer a kicking for not having more charisma. Well, make your mind up, son. What do you want, charisma or dependability? Sort of detail-heavy, intelligent and transparent politics, or charisma-heavy, opaque and largely fatuous politics? Somewhere between the two, probably. Which leads us to the status certificates, which is what I will endeavour to call them for the duration of this programme, which means that by 7 minutes after 10 this morning, I'll probably be calling them passports again. You can ring in now. You don't need a long run-up on the simple question of whether you approve or disapprove. I think because I am drawn to approving, with a couple of caveats that I'll share in a moment, but I think I'd be more interested in talking to people who are drawn to disapproving. But I don't want to shout at each other. We may touch on Brexit in the next hour, so there'll be plenty of opportunities for fisticuffs, facts-based analysis versus people who are still convinced that their feelings will somehow prevail. So there's don't worry, it's not going to be a pacifistic programme today necessarily. We've got PMQs at 12 as well. But in the first hour, let's find out if you want to have a fight. Here I am, 0345 6060 973. But I will find it hard, I think, to come out with all guns blazing for the very simple reason that I don't feel deeply, passionately about it. It just seems to me to be broadly sensible. And once again, and I do wonder as the clock ticks and the years pass, whether or not this is a healthy position to adopt. I think it is still. But you just simply look at some of the personnel lined up in favour of something. This is how I began my Brexit analysis, you know. I didn't know much any more than you did about membership of the European Union. Had absolutely no idea how it reached into almost every level of our trading status and our economy. I just looked at the personnel lined up against it and thought, well, they're mostly a bunch of untrustworthy geezers, perhaps. And here we are. So I just look at some of the people who are ranting about how awful it is without really being able to explain why, and I find myself concluding that it doesn't actually seem to be that awful at all. But I'm sure there are more nuanced, intelligent, comprehensible, digestible objections to it that I'm currently missing. Because one of the great curses of an open mind, of course, is that you do find yourself wondering, however strong your opinion may be, whether or not it's actually wrong, you know? It seems to me to be a fairly innocuous way in which to ensure that people more likely to be infectious can be excluded from a public space or a private space, but maybe there is some massive objection to it. It's a deeply politically incorrect joke that, given the way the world turns and the way things have changed since Paul Merton told this joke on Have I Got News For You, I almost hesitate to share it with you, but I know that the butt of the joke, I'm fairly confident the butt of the joke found it funny. And do you ever remember when the air is knocked out of you by a joke, by a joke that is so wincingly close to the bone that you are almost guilty before you inhale enough breath to laugh outwardly? And it was when ID cards were a very big part of political conversation. And Paul Merton, David Blunkett was Home Secretary, and for younger listeners, David Blunkett is blind. Lord Blunkett is blind, and in fact, his guide dog Offa became a celebrity of sorts at the time. So David Blunkett was Home Secretary. Paul Merton was on Have I Got News For You, and he said in a joke that is absolutely dripping with political incorrectness. He said, "Can't we just tell him that we've introduced them?" Which you're wincing now, aren't you? But you're also acknowledging the humour behind it and the absence of any malevolence or nastiness. And I found myself this morning, as I was preparing to talk to you about so-called vaccine passports, I found myself genuinely wondering whether the fact that joke is the first thing that pops into my head when I think about ID cards had in some way distracted me from the more serious liberty elements, the more serious social freedom elements of conversations about things like vaccine passports. That's just a sort of mild digression. Let's get the phone lines open and you can tell me what the problem is. So here's my reasoning, right? That I worry that people who can't have a vaccine for medical reasons, because of their immune system, immunosuppression disorders, various other reasons, there are people who will be very, very wary of any form of vaccine, because there are always a tiny number of people who suffer from side effects, and there are some medical conditions that will render those side effects either inevitable or more likely. So I feel immediately sorry for them, possibly for you if you're listening to this now, because, you know, if it is something that you're required to show at the door of a pub, that's you not allowed to go into a pub. If it's something that your employer requires you to show on the way into the building, then this arguably compromises your employability and could see you, I think, unfairly dismissed from a job. So is that a big enough objection to actually undermine the whole project? You presume that by the time herd immunity is achieved through vaccination, then you won't need to have the certificate. So it will be a temporary measure, but I don't know how much consolation that provides to people who will be banned from even entering the Dog and Duck, or could be prevented from going back to work at their usual workplace when this saga is over. So that's problem number one. I'd like you to add to that list if you can, in all the usual ways. But let me put my stall out. They keep a record of who is vaccinated, right? We know that because we're contacted directly to come for the vaccination. They're doing it in tiers, in cohorts, as we know. So there is a centralised record of vaccination. They'll know who's turned up for it and they'll know who hasn't. So at the very first point of entry into this contemplation, I find myself wondering, what is the problem with people who are on a list having a certificate on their phone? Because as I understand it, if this does come to fruition, it will happen as an addendum to the app on your phone, the NHS app that you've downloaded on your phone. You can have a certificate added to that, and it will, there'll be something, you know, whether it's a QR code or something else, it will be scanned and checked on your way into buildings, and it will be checked not against the list, but if you're on the list, you'll get the certificate. So there's a centralised list. Stay with me on this, because it's either the end of the argument, in which case we might have to find someone else to talk about after the 10:15 break, I say 10:15. I'll probably be a little late. Keith nods sagely with a degree of depression and resignation, such as his want since he started this job. So either this is the end, in a way, the end of the conversation, or there is a coach and horses-sized gap through which you're about to drive. Here's my list of everyone who's had the vaccination. You're not on that list, okay? That's either your choice or your medical condition or something else that I haven't currently thought of. What exactly is the problem with everybody on that list being given a badge to wear? You don't have to wear it, but if you're not wearing it, you can't come into the pub. There's a philosophical clash here between people who use the phrase free market as if it's some sort of ideological trump card without ever really understanding what it means, and people who, despite apparently being great fans of freedom, are today opposed to businesses actually being allowed to decide who can and can't come onto their premises. But that possibly is a bit highfalutin for our purposes initially. Just begin with that. So 10:14 is the time. Phone lines are open. Straight yes or no question. Good old-fashioned radio phone-in. But you know how this one works. The what is really 5% of what I want from you. It's the why of it that intrigues me the most. I appreciate sometimes people end up on the programme expecting to be able to simply say what they think, and then they have a fit of the vapours when I ask them why they think it. But, you know, that's what intrigues me. I want to know why you think it. So tell me where you stand on the question of so-called vaccine passports. I prefer COVID status certificates. And then tell me why you think it, particularly if you don't like the idea. Because, as I say, the curse of an open mind is that however strongly you may feel about something, or however strongly you may think your evidence for thinking something is, if people think the polar opposite, there's always a little bit of you, if you're not a bigot, that wonders whether they might be right and you might be wrong. Should write a book about that. It's 10:15. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The phone lines are open. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. I want to go to the pub as soon as possible. If the COVID status certificate allows me to do that sooner rather than later, what possible problem can there be? That's a simplistic, selfish, entry-level question, and you can extend it into any corner of existence that you please. Okay? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. It's 10:16. I've got a caveat, but I'm going to save it to use as a zinger when a caller fails to realise in advance what the caveat is. Something that may allay some concerns you have with the idea of a so-called vaccine status certificate. But with no further ado, Jerome's in Clapham. Jerome, what would you like to say?
I've got a few issues with it. Like, obviously, the people with immune deficiencies and things like that, that's a worry. Also, like, when would they be implementing such a thing? Would that be in the very near future? Because I work for the NHS, but a lot of people that I know under the age of 60, they haven't really been offered a vaccine. And also, right, another gripe I've got, it's very strange to me because obviously the ethnic minorities in London, especially where I live, have still got large reservations about the vaccine.
Why?
And it appears to me...
Why Jerome? Why do we think that?
They always...
I know they do, but in your sort of sphere of experience and acquaintance, what are the objections?
I don't particularly have a lot of reservations about it.
I know, but the people you've just described to me...
I know the fertility thing is a big deal to them. The fact that they're still doing the fertility studies, and it's a long-term study, as far as I'm aware, it's at least a year's worth of study. So right. You don't know if you're giving this to people under 40 that may plan to be having a family in the future. I'm going to stop you there because you might work for the NHS, but there are absolutely no grounds for being hesitant about the vaccine that are linked to fertility, and even saying it live on the radio is profoundly unhelpful. So we'll part as friends, Jerome. But if, as I say, if you're going to give me a why of it, or if you're going to give me your what I am only interested in why you don't like something. So we've already mentioned people who may have medical conditions, to which my cautious response is that it will only be a temporary arrangement, and it's something that gets everybody back into circulation sooner rather than later. It just means some people will be stage 2 circulation as opposed to stage 1. And yeah, I mean, if you have turned down the vaccine, then you could argue that you've been discriminated against, which is where I bring my zinger in. But I'm going to wait for another caller before I unsheath my zinger. 22 minutes after 10 is the time. Shuggy is in Southgate. Shuggy, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello.
What I'd like to say is, yes, I'm broadly in favour of the vaccine certificate or passport, whatever you want to call it, because it's been done before. Yellow fever, blah blah blah. It's not beyond the wit of man to do these things. My concern is that, like at the start of the pandemic, it seems that one of the overriding ideas is that we can monetize this. So if you give it to the government to look after this scheme, Boris has already spoken about the great complexity of it.
Listen, I don't want to sound grouchy.
No, it's okay, go on.
Well, all right, I will. I want to know about the theoretical, philosophical principle of the idea, because you're absolutely right. Depending on who's put in charge of it, it could end up being a complete... Well, it could either go Dido Harding or it could go Kate Bingham, and we're all going to hope it goes Kate Bingham, while presuming it's going to go a bit Dido Harding, aren't we? That doesn't work. Today we're having it's a philosophy seminar today. Have you got a problem with it based on ethics, for example, or law? Ethical or legal concerns.
No, I don't think there are any ethical or legal concerns. It's a simple, and it's there's no reason why people who are not allowed to have the vaccine for whatever reason, whether it be medical, moral, religious, blah, 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 they can have the certificate too, the passport too, saying they haven't had it and this is the reason why.
Yes, that's not quite my zinger. I'm going to keep my zinger sheathed for now, but there is a zinger ready to be revealed at this point. And I mean, Shuggy also dances around or leads me to the other point to make, which is there will be some people who can't benefit from this, but they shouldn't necessarily be the reason why nobody can. Do you see what I mean? So either, let's say you could go into the pub with a vaccine certificate on May the 1st. This is all made up. The dates are just as arbitrary and plucked out of the sky as the ones that Boris Johnson uses, all right? So don't read anything into them at all. May the 1st, if you've got the certificate, you can go into the pub. By August the 1st, you won't need one at all. If we don't bring in the certificate, everybody's going to have to wait until August the 1st. Complete theoretical, pie-in-the-sky theorising, but I don't think people who won't be able to use it in May should be the reason why no one can use it in August. But my zinger might solve this. Simon's in Reading. Simon, what would you like to say?
Good morning, great James. I just had to say it's a bit.
Did you say was that a slip of the tongue there? It sounded like morning, great James.
No, well, it's a slip of the tongue.
Okay. Well, I think I might make that a new rule. I might make that a new rule. Actually, carry on. Simon.
I'd just like to say, to me, it's a bit like a driving licence. If you choose not to have a driving licence, then you can't drive. If you have a driving licence, then that gives you the right to drive whatever vehicle you have a licence for.
And therefore driving discriminates against people who don't have driving licence. You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the point.
The only caveat I'll put in that is basically the first caller brought it up, in that if there are some communities that are more reluctant for either good reasons or bad reasons to take up the vaccine, then you could be inadvertently, it could end up being an inadvertent racist policy.
Because, as the first caller touched on this, because hesitancy is disproportionately prevalent in ethnic minority communities for a whole host of valid reasons, and of course, sadly, for some completely invalid ones, which is why we couldn't explore the theory further with him, but we can, then it becomes, as you say, accidentally discriminatory, to which, I don't know, I think the response of, well, I don't see why I should suffer because of your hesitancy, I mean, unfounded but not unhinged hesitancy. Why should I suffer because you don't trust the science? Do you see?
I see both sides of it, but that's sort of my only thing that's for me sort of is a bit of a hesitancy about that sort of blanket. If it's up to you whether you get it or not.
So what we're looking at, let's sort of think it out loud, and I'm relying on the Times leader for this and a couple of other articles, because it has been snuck out by the Prime Minister, largely because it's a direct contradiction of what all of his senior politicians were saying right up until the point he said the polar opposite in public. So we'd be thinking pubs, wouldn't we? We'd be thinking theatres, probably. We'd be thinking clubs, nightclubs. Does employers put a different complexion on things if it moves from the realms of the social to the professional? It doesn't feel the same to me. It feels like there are bigger issues at play if you can't return to your workplace.
Again, my wife is in care work, and she's been fortunate enough; she's had her vaccine now.
First half
again,
of the vaccine.
No, she's actually had both.
Has she really?
Yeah.
Oh, happy days.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, if you're, I think it's already been shown that the vaccine prevents, or doesn't absolutely prevent, but cuts down your ability to get it and pass it on. If you're working in a care home, then surely it's reasonable for your employer to say, well, hang about, we don't want you bringing this disease into our care home.
Yeah.
Therefore, to cut down on that risk, we require you have this vaccine.
A care home, of course, seems to be a more acute example, and there are very worrying reports about low take-up rates in some care homes. I do wonder whether a distinction would need to be made between workplace and social places. So you're looking at theatres, you're looking at pubs, you're looking at clubs, football stadiums, of course, sports stadiums, and then if you can't, yeah. But you could add, I'm still keeping my zinger in the box because I think it really plays into a large gap in the thinking here and closes the gap. But if you've got a valid objective, you can explain to me what presumably Brexit hardman Steve Baker's got a problem with it because he seems to have a problem with anything that involves sort of community action or my rights, me. That may be unfair on Brexit hardman Steve Baker, actually. Let me withdraw that and simply use a broad generalisation about Brexiters who talk about libertarianism without apparently being fully aware of exactly what they mean by it. Or indeed people who claim that the market will solve everything. Because if the market can solve everything, then the owner of the pub or the nightclub or the football stadium, it's all a bit hail and pace, isn't it? If you're not on the list, you're not coming in. But suddenly they're against that now because it would be unfair. It would be an infringement of their civil liberties. Do you know, I had the pleasure of pootling around on Wayne from Basildon's Facebook page last night, and I saw him trying to pass this wisdom off as his own. He said someone was complaining about police checks at the seaside in Essex at the weekend, and Wayne had replied, everybody loves the police until they're the ones being policed. And I hauled it. I said, where'd you hear that then, champ? But it was a policewoman who rang into this programme that said it, and she's dead right. It's a bit like Law and Order. I'd extend it from the police right through to rules and law. Everybody loves rules, especially right-wing people. They love rules and laws until they're expected to obey them. In the same way, they absolutely love the police until they're the ones being policed. And that hypocrisy is probably best highlighted by the kind of pundits and commentators who wax lyrical about the necessity of stopping and searching young black men, regardless of whether there's any evidence at all that they've been involved in anything remotely resembling a crime. That's absolutely a great idea. But if you're going to start stopping me and asking me to prove that I've got a right to be out potentially breaching coronavirus rules, then, well, that makes me the Nelson Mandela of Basingstoke. I think I found, not that it matters, I think I found evidence that George Eustace, the Environment Secretary, either misrepresented the facts on a recent Channel 4 News interview or simply has no idea what it is that Boris Johnson signed up to on Christmas Eve with regard to bivalve molluscs, undepurated, unpurified. I can't remember what the correct word is. Don't sue me. I'll share that with you a little later, and we'll be speaking to an 8th generation oyster man, which, if like me, you read a lot around the sort of 18th and 19th centuries. I'm not being a scholar. I usually read historical crime fiction set in the 18th and 19th centuries, or a good slice of Dickens. Then you'll know that oysters used to be very much a staple of working class diets. I presume they'd come in from Essex, would they, and then sort of get flogged out of barrels on the streets of Victorian London. But so the idea of an 8th generation oyster man is rather romantic to me, although not a lot romantic about what's happening to them as a direct consequence of that deal that was supposed to save our fishermen. So we'll get onto that a little later in the programme. PMQs is on the way as well. But for now, the vaccine passport, as it inevitably has already become known, despite the fact it will be nothing of the sort. You already have vaccination data, do you know, on your NHS app, because you may not have an NHS app. You may have a problem with downloading the app, in which case give me a call. But remember, you need to tell me why, and I reserve the right to ask you questions about your position, especially if I don't understand it, even more than if I don't share it. If I don't understand it, I really benefit from being able to ask you, what is the problem? I remember somebody many moons ago, I think it was Farage, objecting to the Oyster card on the London Underground because he didn't want the government to know where he was going, which, you know, given the man's propensity for self-publicity, seems a remarkable contradiction in terms. He seems to film himself almost going to the lavatory. But nevertheless, he didn't want the government to know where he was using his Oyster card. And you know, I have changed my view slightly on this, having seen what's happened in America, where, as the third most senior Republican in the House of Representatives said yesterday, that the white supremacy has taken over the party. And if you have got fascists in charge, then suddenly all of these casual throwaway lines about, I don't care what the government has, what power, I've got nothing to hide, I've got nothing to fear. You suddenly find yourself wondering what would happen if a genuinely totalitarian government got into power. I mean, it suddenly becomes feasible that they might want to track your movements or dealings. And weirdly, people who sort of have arguably flirted with fascism end up making the case for civil liberties because of the danger of them ending up in charge. 10:37 is the time. John is in Exeter. John, what do you reckon?
Yeah, good morning, James. You've just shot my fox, really. The nothing to hide, nothing to fear point.
Yes.
You see, that is all very fine and well as long as we believe it, but it's not true. I mean, Windrush is an ideal, perfect example of if you've got nothing to hide and nothing wrong, you still have an awful lot to fear.
Yes, you're right. I have kind of shot your fox a little because I no longer subscribe to the nothing to hide, nothing to fear thing. But I can't currently see the leap you've made from COVID status certificates to Windrush. Just talk me through that, if you would.
Well, the poor folk of Windrush who were sent back to the West Indies,
yes,
basically were sent back because of lack of documentation.
And this is an argument for more documentation.
No, it's not. But it's an argument for if the ID card is the golden ticket. If we believe everything on the ID card, if the
but it's not an ID card. It's a COVID status certificate that would be under one proposal that would be sort of part of your NHS app.
Not sure I see the difference between a certificate and an ID card. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
No.
Tell me.
Well, this is a very specific certificate proving that you've done something, whereas an ID card is kind of like a. We've all got ID cards in a sense. If you've got a passport or a driving license, the problem is the suggestion is that it's compulsory to carry it, and there's nothing about these suggestions that are compulsory. So that's the biggest difference. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. It just means there's certain places you won't be able to go to until someone makes a point that allows me to unsheath my Zinger, which oddly hasn't happened yet. We're 40 minutes into the hour. So they're not like ID cards because they're not compulsory. Next question.
It's a gathering of information about the individual.
They've already gathered the information.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
So it's not. Sorry, it sounds like I'm badgering you, but so it's not a gathering of information. It's merely a badge saying that you're on a list that already exists, which you don't have to wear.
We're not necessarily talking about the whole population who have this view, but I can see a reluctance of people thinking to themselves, I do not want more.
I can as well, which is why I'm questioning your reasoning so robustly, because I want to find out whether it stands up to scrutiny. And I think, John, we could agree so far it hasn't.
No, I'm not sure we can.
Well, it's not compulsory, which is why your comparison with the ID card was invalid. And it is very specific to what it's not a gathering of information either, which is why your suggestion that it was a gathering of information was invalid. And they're the only two arguments you've put forward, and neither of them work. You're making me sound unkind here, John, but I'm only responding to what you're telling me, and now you're denying that I've responded to what you've told me in the way that I clearly have.
I am not convinced. I can.
So you're not
I can-
convinced by what? Because you said they were gathering information, and I have reminded you that the information has already been gathered, and then you said it's no different to an ID card, and then I pointed out one enormous, glaring reason why it's very different from an ID card. What is it you're not convinced by in those two exchanges?
Yeah, okay, you win.
Thank you. Next caller, John in Chelmsford. John, what would you... John in Exeter, before you go, mate, we're still mates, right? Has he already gone? He's already gone. I hope so. John's in Chelmsford. John, what would you like to say?
I'm for the passport to travel abroad, to say, yes, you've had the jab and you can travel abroad on holiday or whatever.
Yes.
The actual certificate, badge, whatever you want to call it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Providing it just says, I have had the jab and I'm up to date with it.
Yeah.
What other information? It should not have any other information other than that. And then, who has got access to that information?
Well, unfortunately, the Test and Trace app, which you may not have downloaded, already has access to the information of where that device has been. Although
Yes, but you can turn that off.
Yes, you can, and you could do the same with this. It just means if
Yes.
you've turned it off, you can't go into those places. So what information is it that you're worried about, if that's the right word? You know what I mean?
If you're an immoral person and
Yeah.
you decided to have an affair with somebody and you turn around and said to your partner, wife, I've gone up to Blackpool, for instance, when really you've gone into central London for a theatre and a meal and
Your
stuff
wife's
like
not going to be able to log on to it, mate. Don't worry.
But then if there's a crime in that area,
Yeah.
would the police be able to turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, we need witnesses for this?
They already
whatever."
can. They can do that with GPS, I think.
Yes, but they can't. If they turn around and then contact you directly saying, well, hang on a minute, your app on Track and Trace said you were in this area.
Okay, right. So your concern is, if I sign up for this and I tell my wife I'm in Birmingham when I'm actually in Basildon, and then
Yeah.
there's a massive crime in Basildon, will the police be able to access a list of all the people that were in Basildon and then contact them one by one to see if they saw the crime?
Well, they can do that on your phone.
Well, they
But if
can't,
you
though.
scan-
I don't
they
know
can
that they
scan
can.
it.
I mean, they can if they're looking for you specifically. If
Well, if they
if
can
they
turn on-
suspect you of the crime and they get hold of your phone, then I think they can triangulate your GPS to find out if you were where you said you were. But I'm not currently, and I could be wrong, John, because I lead a life of such eminent legality that I'm not fully aware of the ins and outs of this. But I'm not currently aware of any process by which, if they're looking for witnesses, they can access a list of everybody whose phone was in that area and then contact them individually and directly.
Yeah, no, but this could be a way for them to do that.
You did just say yeah, no, but.
Yeah, but this could be a way they
Well,
could do
I
that.
think your point has got a touch of the Vicky Pollards to it, as is demonstrated by the yeah, no, but. It wouldn't be.
Okay.
So I give you a pledge that the police won't do something they could currently do anyway in the event of this new certificate being introduced. Because they could
Yeah.
currently do it anyway. So why would they wait for a vaccine certificate to do something they could do anyway?
Because you could claim that somebody else has got your phone.
You could do that now.
Yes, but if you've got a certificate
On
that
your
is clear
phone?
and on your phone,
Yes.
so it can work both ways.
Yes, I don't know. It's perfectly possible I've misunderstood you. I don't think that I have, but you're right. I guess one flaw in this proposal could be that Keith has had all the vaccines. He's got vaccines coming out of his ears, and I haven't because I'm too lazy or I'm weird or I'm up to no good, and I could just nick Keith's phone. And but then you've got thumbprints. It's quite hard to open people's phones these days. Not all of them, but most of them. I don't know. I mean, again, you're on the list. But I don't think that those concerns are... I mean, what is it you're up to, John, that you're so keen to keep stum about?
3 o'clock today, so I'm going to have my jab. So
Yeah.
I'll be quite happy to carry around the certificate or badge to say I've had my jab.
And where does the wife think you're going to be at 3 o'clock today?
Hopefully she's going to be with me because she's taking me.
How likely are schools going to be able to do what they are required to do from March the 8th? I may ask head teachers that question because I'm not sure anybody else is qualified to answer it, although it won't stop the usual suspects queuing up on a television programme near you to argue the toss. Will you be able to do these sort of 3 tests? The press release said, I heard Gavin Williamson being interviewed this morning, astonishingly, I managed to stay awake. But the press release said 3 tests a week, but he insisted that the guidance says 3 tests a fortnight. So is that something you're going to be able to do? And then my favourite bit of him doing the interview rounds this morning was
when he said he'd be giving £6,000 to primary schools, like in total, I think, per school. And the interviewer said, what can they spend that on? He says, maybe some more staff. I go, mate, what? £6,000 on staff? Talk me through that. Please. 10 minutes to 11 is the time. I try. I really do try. And, yesterday, we're all guilty, of course, of allowing criticism of conduct and behaviour to leach into ad hominems or criticisms of characters and individuals. It's a Sisyphean task to change your habits on stuff like that, something I addressed directly in my latest book, How Not to Be Wrong, the Art of Changing Your Mind. So when Boris Johnson found himself complaining yesterday about journalists being mean to him, I did suppress a snigger. But it's very important to remember, even if you like to stick your name on everything, whether it was your idea or not, Boris Bikes, Boris Bridges, Boris Airports, but people are being mean to me, they're personalising politics. Mate, you stick your name on everything that you go near. Everything vaguely good, even bridges that have never been built, or airports that remain a figment of your imagination. Has it been called a Boris Tunnel yet? Has anyone called it the Boris Tunnel? The one that's going to go all the way to Ireland with a massive underground roundabout, underwater roundabout? By the Isle of Man? I do not know. But I am resisting the urge to criticise this person directly. I'm simply going to criticise their conduct, because they've managed to listen to the programme today and come away with the idea that I'm actually recommending real badges. As in, you get given a badge that says, I've had the vaccine, perhaps with a little smiley face or a thumbs up or a I don't know. You could turn a needle into a human. Like when people get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds for it. So you just paint a couple of legs coming out the bottom of a syringe and you could call it, I don't know, knobby needle. Or so that's a bit old-fashioned. Steve the syringe, something like that. I don't know. And that would be the badge you wear. So Rose has managed to listen to the programme and come away with the idea that I'm genuinely suggesting badges instead of something technological, probably linked to the NHS app, which is conclusive proof that you have had the vaccine. Unless, of course, someone's nicked your phone, in which case we may have a mild problem to overcome. But given that it's very hard these days to open a phone, you need a passcode or a fingerprint. So I don't know how big a worry that is. 10:52 is the time. I think I successfully resisted the urge to call you stupid. Your tweet is stupid, but you are not. I'm sure you're a genius. Nick's in Wimborne. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
Thanks again for letting me back on your programme. I was a bit chuckled, actually, by the badges, because I think it's a great idea. I really do. But anyway...
But anyone can nick a badge, mate. You can make your own badge. True. It's a stupid idea. But that's not why you rang in.
Idea. No, I agree. The phone idea is the way to go. Except the problem is my wife, my son, and myself, we're a bit of Luddites. Although I'm a sort of I'm involved in technology. The problem is I've got an iPhone 5. We all have. And
you're going to have to translate that for me. Does that mean you can't download the app?
Yeah, it has to work on an iOS of 13.5 and above.
Well, I'm asking you to simplify it. Don't start talking about iOS 13s and above. Just so you wouldn't. Well, we'd work something out. We'd find another way of. You could carry a I don't know, some sort of online certificate that didn't need the app. There'd be a little wriggle round, surely. And if there isn't, as I'm sure you realise, it's not a reason to stop the rest of us from benefiting from having better phones than you.
But hold on. There's a lot of old people like myself, I think you'll find, that've got iPhone 5. There's a lot of them out there still. So isn't that discrimination against us?
No, actually, do you know, I'm giggling, but you make a valid point. It really is. But it wouldn't just be on... One option is to use the NHS app, which already carries vaccine data. That's just one option, and you found a valid objection to that option. So we'd find another, a digital vaccine passport via a QR code or something like that you could do on your phone. But I'm not sure my mum could do it on hers, because she's got a very old phone, because she prefers it that way. So, yes, these are technological quibbles, though, Nicholas, as opposed to coach and horse-sized gaps. No, the zinger has nothing to do. There is a zinger there, in that you're not allowed to buy alcohol unless you produce ID, are you? So what's the difference? Answer, well, if the ID is confined to technology above a certain threshold and price, then you've got a problem. But
everyone who wants to buy booze, if, like me, despite being in your late 40s, you're often mistaken for a teenager, you need an ID card. That's why I grew a beard, actually. I was sick of being asked for ID in pubs. But, yeah, we deal with that. My apologies for not making it clearer that that's just one option. It's certainly not a badge, but neither does it exclusively have to be a smartphone app. Harry's in Watford. Harry, what would you like to say?
It's ready.
Harry, are you there, mate?
Yes, good morning, James.
Hello, Harry. What were you distracted by then?
Sorry, I'm homeschooling my children at the moment, so one of them just got.
Oh yeah. Well, how many teachers listening would love to ring me in the middle of a lesson at 10:55 on a Wednesday morning, and are not allowed to, Harry? Hey.
We agree, James.
Carry on.
Until it. No, I just wanted to call to allay some of your listeners' fears. I was listening to your previous caller who was talking about his concerns over privacy and the app being tracked by the police. In his, sort of a way, he's in Birmingham city centre or wherever it was, and, the police sort of report a crime and now want to call everybody.
Yeah.
I'm an ex-PC myself.
Yes.
I just wanted to allay some fears here that by carrying around your phone, you have the ability to be tracked 24/7, okay? Should you be involved in a serious crime?
Yes.
Yes, and your phone GPS location services
excuse me, officer, or merely suspected of involvement in a serious...
Or merely suspected, yes.
Thank you. Carry on, my lord.
Then, of course, there is the capabilities of tracking it. But with the sheer amount of effort, work, not to mention the massive workload, the strain on the police services, and there is virtually no likelihood of your caller being traced unless he is actually targeted and specifically, what's the word I'm looking for? Suspected of a crime.
Yes. I don't think you're legally allowed to just do a sort of fishing expedition and speak to... if they see you on CCTV and think we'd like to speak to this person because they may have witnessed a crime, I think they're allowed to put your picture up on what we used to call Police 5 in the Midlands with Shaw Taylor. Keep them peeled. But I don't know. I thought I'd allayed his fears, but you can come in as a former copper and you can allay them even further, Harry.
Absolutely, James. It is not going to happen. And your caller who was worried about that kind of thing, if his main concern is he's worried that his wife might find out that he's having an affair, he's got bigger problems to worry about than just being tracked by the
Poor fella, it was all theoretical. He's definitely not playing away. Indeed, he's going on a hot date with his wife at 3:00 today to his local vaccination centre. What are you supposed to be teaching instead of ringing the radio programme?
We've got a maths lesson in about 5 minutes, James.
All right, carry on. 10:57 is the time. I love this. My friend Scott's tweeted me. He's tweeted the words Ian Trevenus. And I'm looking at it thinking, what's wrong with him now? What's he on about? And I suddenly remembered I was looking for a name for my cartoon syringe, which would be on the badge you wear in order to prove that you've been vaccinated. Ian Trevenus. Don't be ridiculous. It's Nobby Needle all day long. Nobby the Needle or Nobby Needle, Nigel Needle, I mean, you want to do Needle because it's better than syringe. Nobby Needle. You have a nice... That's how you get kids to get vaccinated. You give them a Nobby Needle sticker. Mark's in Reading. Obviously quite big in Reading at the moment. Long may it continue. Mark, briefly, if you would, what do you want to say?
Yes, James. I'll be as brief as I can. I think if we let businesses decide,
yes,
then as a customer, I can choose whether I want to frequent that business or not.
Yes.
But obviously, that gives the business a commercial decision they have to make, because they're turning away potential business of people that...
Which would be a weird thing to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But we're in a weird state right now.
We are.
And it would...
So if I own a football stadium or a pub or a nightclub or a theatre, I decide whether or not you need to show the certificate to get in or not. And weirdly, the people that call themselves libertarians often call themselves free marketeers. And on this one, the contradiction at the heart of their bogus ideology seems to be eluding them.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm sure they would say, well, we're thinking about the freedom of the customer. But I would agree with you. They seem to be tying themselves up in knots a little bit. Yeah,
well, I've got a business owner on the tweet, actually, Neil Rankin, the chef who has a few places. He used to have one near me, which was magnificent. And he says, I'm frankly baffled that anyone who has had or will get the vaccine doesn't see that being able to prove it, even worldwide, as a privilege and the most sensible route for not being treated as an infection threat anymore, which, frankly, I'm getting sick of. He's dead right. I mean, it's a metaphorical badge that allows you to prove that you pose the lowest possible risk of infecting people in that place, and therefore you're allowed in. Have we heard any? Really? Jabby McNeedle. And not Stabby McNeedle, but Jabby McNeedle's quite good. I prefer Nobby the Needle, but because Nobby's like a real name. We do sometimes go off on slightly immature tangents on this programme, and I have to warn you in advance, I can't see us stopping anytime soon. As you know, I try to read these stories from organs that encouraged you to vote for Brexit. So this is from the Daily Express, under the headline, "Is this what we voted for? Devastating Brexit poll sheds light on splintering UK trade. 2/3 of British retailers plan to stop selling to Northern Ireland." A devastating poll has indicated. I think it's a proper poll. The Express has a slightly worrying habit of calling online calls to arms so it gets its own readers to vote on something. We used to do it here a bit as well, so there's a little touch of pot kettle. If you see a poll suggesting that, I don't know, the Boaty McBoatface should be Prime Minister, it's not scientific. I think this one is scientific, but anyway, the conclusion is that 2/3 of British retailers plan to stop selling to Northern Ireland. They've got some front, the Express. If you listen to this programme, you'll know that every single person who voted for Brexit knows exactly what they were voting for. And knew at the time, knew now, even as the promise of what they were going to get changed completely. They were absolutely adamant that they voted for the polar opposite of what they said they voted for yesterday. But the Daily Express today says, is this what we voted for? But don't worry, we're not going down that road. Although we will return to Brexit-related matters at about 11:30, with particular reference to depurated bivalve molluscs, or DBMs, as they are referred to, in a government-published document that seems to me, and I am just one little fella, one lonely plough, working his way up his lonely furrow. I think I found a British government document that directly contradicts what the Environment Secretary George Eustace has been telling you. No doubt it's a sin of omission rather than a barefaced lie. 5 minutes after 11 is the time. I'm also struggling with my own inbox because despite me not asking you at all, you seem to be more engaged with the question of what we would call my cartoon syringe that would appear on the sticker that everybody got instead of the technological app that we're actually talking about. Peter says Vaxie McVaxface, which obviously has some legs. Sally Lindsay, star of stage and screen, star of just about everything, actually. So, do you know Sally Lindsay was even in the Winifred School Choir when they did There's No One Quite Like Grandma when she was about 7. She says Vinnie Vaccine. Vinnie Vaccine's got a ring to it, hasn't it? Vinnie Vaccine? But anyway, no, I can't read that one out on the radio, Leo. Honestly. And also, there's no alliteration there. If you insist on using Nigel as the name of my cartoon syringe. Nobby Needles, says Guy, sounds like quite an uncomfortable procedure. You're not wrong. Sounds like an old-fashioned condition, doesn't it? Oh, I tell you what, I'm glad no one gets Nobby Needles anymore. They were more painful than rickets. 6 minutes after 11 is the time. The vaccine passport, as people insist on calling it, continues, I think, to occupy our attention for the time being, although I'm going to opt for, just glancing at my switchboard, can we free up a couple of phone lines? I know it always makes me sound desperately ungrateful, but just a couple. And I'd like to hear from head teachers about how confident you are regarding the testing regimes that you are going to be expected to implement in schools. I just want to know. So March the 8th, we all want schools to fully reopen, and then in enormous 20-foot-high letters, screamed from the rooftops, safely. I do not want schools to reopen unsafely, because that would be chuffing stupid. But they've done it before. In fact, they've done an awful lot of things that could be loosely described as chuffing stupid. So as a head teacher or someone in charge of this kind of thing, how confident are you that you will be able to fully reopen classrooms according to the COVID testing rules that are being implemented? Because I've got to tell you, most parents are absolutely under the impression that all pupils are going to be going back a week on Monday. However, it's reported today that hardly any secondary schools will actually start face-to-face lessons for every child on that date. This is from the Director of Policy at the Association of School and College Leaders. We think it is extremely unlikely that there will be secondary schools able to welcome back all of their pupils on March the 8th. Testing all secondary school pupils 3 times on site is a huge logistical challenge. The good news is, of course, that Gavin Williamson's in charge. So, Gavin eats huge logistical challenges for breakfast. Sarcasm emoji. Ring me if you're a head teacher, and you can tell me whether or not you think you're going to pull this one off. Oh, I'm being a bit sexist. Hashtag everyday sexism. Why do I presume that this syringe is male? Maxine the vaccine is our winner. So please stop sending me more suggestions now. Maxine the vaccine. Maxine, vaccine, Maxine? Maxine, vaccine. You can have a nice sort of sticker, picture. No? All right, I'll stop. Alexander's in Middlesbrough. Alexander, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'm willing and looking forward to taking the vaccine, but I'm 22 with no pre-existing conditions, so I won't be able to get it until later in the year, so probably past the 21st of June. Is this policy going to be discriminating against me solely because of my age and health?
Keith, you've had an hour to get a sound effect ready for me unsheathing my zinger. Keith, have you got anything for me to... I'm about to unsheath my zinger. No? Honestly. No, that's rubbish. I wanted a kind of swing, like Mike Myers type. Wait, no, because the app would also accommodate recent negative tests.
Oh, okay.
Zing! And that's not me. I read that one because I had exactly the same reservation that you have, and then I read into it a little further, and it can't solely be vaccines. Recent negative tests are what you need at the moment to get onto aeroplanes, aren't they? So that would simply be extended to include the vaccine, because if you had been successfully vaccinated, then you wouldn't need to produce evidence of a negative test. So it's win-win, win-win-win, win-win.
Oh, win-win.
There you go. Happy days. Thank you, Alexander.
Happy days.
No, and thank you for allowing me to get my zinger out, because it was getting quite uncomfortable. 10 minutes after 11 is the time. Tony is in Mitcham. Tony, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm not sure your zinger might have,
It zinged you out, hasn't it? It zinged you out, mate.
It may have.
Go on, then.
Give it a try. Basically, I'm from a BME community, black community.
Yes.
There is some reservations about taking the vaccine.
I know there are, and it breaks my heart, but...
Yeah, but just to say, obviously there are issues in regards to, there are tests still ongoing in young 30-year-olds. I think they're offering you like £5,000 if you want to take it as a young, fit and healthy adult. So there are still tests going on. So there is, I think that adds to the reluctancy, because...
But how? I mean, the tests are always going on. This is simply a case of people signing up to keep in touch, as it were, with the vaccine. Go on.
Yeah, definitely. There's still, we understand that. But, because I guess the speed, obviously there's hesitancy already, but then the speed at which the vaccine has been rolled out adds to that, I don't know, underlying unease amongst the BME community. But moving on from there, basically,
yes.
I think, there's... in regards to your zinger, does that caveat include if you've been tested and perhaps you have the antibodies already?
Yeah.
Are you still given a passport or the certificate with that? So you wouldn't need. So you don't necessarily need to have the jab.
No, because actually, and I think this was where some confusion crept in earlier. If you are pregnant. The current JCVI advice is that you may be able to have the vaccine if you're pregnant and at high risk of getting the virus because of where you work, or if you have a health condition that means you're at high risk of serious complications of coronavirus. But there is no evidence. The COVID-19 vaccine is unsafe if you're pregnant, but more evidence is needed before you can routinely be offered it. So they're being super careful, but there is no evidence that it is unsafe if you're pregnant. And the reason why you have people signing up to testing is so that they can collate the evidence. You can't have the evidence, you can't collect the evidence that it's completely safe unless people are contributing to the research into whether or not it's completely safe. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, but they are still testing, aren't they? And pregnant women, they are still gathering evidence regarding...
But they have to, because it's a brand new vaccine.
Of course. But can you not see how that can... add to somebody's fears or...
No, of course I can't, because would you rather drive a car that isn't tested regularly?
But we want to see the end result. I think there's a thing about seeing the end result and then having that 100%...
You put me in a horribly difficult position here. Can I tell you why?
Okay, go ahead.
Because I do not understand... because I think a month ago, right, I would have said to you, but why so worried, why so nervous? There's no earthly way that these companies or these scientists would ever sort of treat us like guinea pigs. And the lesson I learned the first day we talked about vaccine hesitancy among ethnic minorities, among BAME communities, the very first thing we learned was that actually there are very, very, very well-recorded and absolutely irrefutable cases of people of colour being treated exactly like laboratory experiments by massive... pharmaceutical companies and even governments run by white people. So I get that completely, and I don't know how to unpick that. I don't know how to argue, because if I say times have changed, you say Windrush, and I say, yeah, you're right, mate. I've got nothing.
And that's where we are, you know. And as I said, it's not an excuse or anything like that. But there is an understandable reluctancy, I believe, amongst the BME committee because of some of the issues which you've just pointed out.
This is the fascinating tightrope between understandable and valid, because I think they're understandable, but I don't think they're valid. But I don't know how to build a bridge between those two positions, Tony. Do you?
Not at all, mate. You know, I mean, if I did that, it's not happening. I've been stewing over it. But no thing off for me just yet.
So if the negative test is added to the vaccine certificate, then some of those problems are addressed.
I'm comfortable. And if there's proof that you have the antibodies, maybe you've already caught COVID and you've successfully recovered from it.
Oh, that's above the test. Sorry, I misunderstood you. I'm being a bit dozy. So that's like the third point of the triangle. You've got the vaccination certificates, you've got the negative tests, or you've got the antibody test, which would have to be relatively recent because, again, the science is new, and that would also allow you into these venues. There we go. We're cool, aren't we? You got your own zinger there, Tony.
Cheers, mate. Nice speaking with you.
11:15 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien. Please stop now sending me suggestions for the name of my cartoon syringe. I really would like to read some other stuff, although I've got to be honest with you, Max Vax is quite good. Speaking of messes that may or may not be unfixable, you may remember, obviously if you're still clinging to the carcass of the idea that Brexit was a good idea, you'll be desperately pretending that fish were never mentioned and fishermen were never mentioned as one of the only areas of British life that could expect an improvement to their terms and conditions, to their existences as a result of leaving the single market and the customs union. They have been comprehensively shafted, but again, it is to be hoped that these problems can be fixed. It may already be too late for some. The BBC, once again, cowed as it is, and denying observable reality, describing an overnight ban by the EU, having left some Cornish fisher folk facing penury and bankruptcy, which would make you very cross, wouldn't it, with the EU, if it was true. Here is the Secretary of State for the Environment, George Eustace, talking to Cathy Newman on Channel 4 News recently. And then I'm going to share with you a document that I have stumbled across as a result of hours of research, found it on Twitter, which, well, it'd just be an interesting comparison to make. And then we'll speak to someone who really knows his onions, or rather, oysters.
And although there's no legal impediment to this trade, the European Union told us a couple of weeks ago that they weren't going to allow it to continue.
Well, actually,
so we're working with them on that.
To be clear, they haven't had a change of heart. They've said quite specifically the rules in this area have not changed. They have applied and continue to do so to all third countries. This is not new, and it is not a surprise to the UK administration. You should have known about it all along.
This is a trade that they don't do with any other third country, and it is somewhere where they've changed their position. We had
That's not what they say. Either they're right.
No, they're not right.
Right, they're wrong.
Not right. I think they are wrong. We do know what they say. We're very familiar with this body of law. We lived with it for 50 years, and we've got technical experts in this area. We had actually discussed it with the Commission, and the Commission had told us the trade could continue.
Are they just making it up then?
Yes, they told us the type of export health certificate that could be used, and their own both public health and animal health laws do provide for the trade to continue. What happened is that the Commission decided, and this was a late decision, that they only took on the first week of February, that they were actually going to change their mind and not allow that trade to continue after all.
So what are you going to do about it?
Well, we're in a dialogue with them because it's an indefensible decision. There's no public health or even animal health grounds for these sorts of restrictions.
Can you guarantee that the government won't let a single shellfish exporter go bust because of Brexit?
Well, what I can say is that...
Can you guarantee that you're not going to let a single one of these businesses go bust because of the decision that you took to leave the EU?
Well, of course, I can't guarantee what will happen to individual businesses.
OK, so you heard that, right? There was a categorical claim that the EU had changed its position, that they were either lying or misleading. You, remember, that's the point, or the British government, represented there by George Eustace, the Secretary of State for Environment. claiming that they'd done it. Was it the first week of February, first week of January? You heard that, right? I wasn't dreaming. So this is something published by the government in March of 2019. This is a British government document. You can find it yourself. It's entitled Exporting or Moving Live Fish and Shellfish. This is, I think it's from March of 2019. The EU Commission has indicated that undepurated LBMs, that's live bivalve molluscs, from Class B waters cannot be imported from Great Britain into the EU for the purpose of depuration, which is a fancy word for purification. This affects both wild harvested live bivalve molluscs and those from aquaculture. The FHI, I don't know what that stands for, but my next guest will tell us, are unable to certify for these consignments until this situation is resolved. DEFRA, which is the department of which George Eustice is now the Secretary of State, I think, is continuing to look for a solution to allow exports of wild harvest live bivalve molluscs to the EU to resume. So we clip it right down just to the bit where he claims the EU is lying. Just that 20, 30 second window, because I want to get to the bottom of this. Someone's not being straight with us. It's either the British government or it's the British government. Because this document was published by the British government. George Eustice is the Secretary of State for the Environment, and the Department for the Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs has published in black and white, it's in front of me now, a statement which categorically describes the impossibility of transporting unpurified live bivalve molluscs from Great Britain to the EU. And I know you're probably still pretending not to care and insisting that you knew what you were voting for, but at some point you're going to have to start objecting to being lied to, if that's what's happening here. And we'll move a little closer to knowing whether it is or not now, because Tom Howard is an 8th generation oysterman, which is a wonderful, absolutely wonderful phrase, but it means that you really know what you're talking about when it comes to oysters. So 2 things, Tom. Thank you for your time. We'll start with the question of whether any of your colleagues, whether any industries, your company, Richard Howard Oysters, based in West Mersey, are you aware of any companies that have already gone to the wall? Because that was the warning. And then second, who do you think is telling us the truth here? The document that I've just read out, or the Secretary of State for the Environment?
Yeah, I mean, morning.
Hello, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I know, because we're part of the Shellfish Association of Great Britain, we're in contact with shellfish producers all around the UK, whether that's oysters, mussels, cockles. And I do know of guys, particularly the mussel sector, that have basically come to a halt, complete halt, because they harvest their mussels and then send them straight off into Europe unpurified, because there's a big market for mussels in places like France and Belgium, and those guys over there then handle them and process them and treat them to get them to the customer as fresh as possible. So those guys have been, I mean, they're talking a complete grind to a halt.
And to be clear, while they try to sell it as an overnight EU ban, it would be illegal for those guys to sell their mussels here unpurified in the UK. So it's not as if they can simply offload them on British fishmongers and supermarkets and hope that they...
Yeah, exactly.
That's just unbelievable. That's the first thing I contacted you about on Twitter, because I read your magisterial tweet on the subject. There's a long thread of explanation, and I just thought at the end of it, hang on a minute, these fellas can't even sell their mussels here because of our food standard laws.
Well, exactly. I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, people... There seems to be a misconception that it's just you grab some oysters, you grab some mussels, throw them in a box and send them to a customer or something like that. But there's rigorous standards, and rightfully so that there are rigorous standards there that we have to abide by to make sure the food we eat is safe. And these mussel guys, there's a couple of caveats there. One, not enough people in Britain eat shellfish. So these mussel guys are my oysters, not enough British people are interested in them because for whatever reason it is. So it's basically shrunk the market and meant that we are limited on where we can put food. Yeah. And again, there's not enough depuration facilities in this country for lots of people to be able to get their product out there.
And it's something we could build. I mean, again, whether or not enough businesses are still in place by the time the depuration plants have been built is moot. But you're of particular interest because you've got quite a big purification operation as part of your business already.
Yeah, we do both. I mean, and that's the thing is we I mean, I've been looking at this situation for the past 3 years, and because I didn't trust from the very beginning that there would be a clear and decent kind of conclusion to all this, and I thought it's going to be chaos for the industry. I mean, I've actually been changing our business model for the past 3 years to make sure that we can deal with Europe basically not being a partner anymore and not being a customer anymore.
What did you see? Because at the time, and like you, I don't want anybody to come away from this conversation thinking that the companies that have been banjaxed by the new trading arrangements, by us becoming a third country, only have themselves to blame for the situation that they're in. Because I know you are not in any stretch of the imagination saying that. But what did you see? Well, the media conversation, the politics of it was telling fishermen in particular that they were going to be the big winners of this process. Why did you see something that many of your colleagues and indeed competitors completely missed?
Because it was lies. Ultimately, I saw through the lies. And I think you judge a person very much by the content of their character. And to be honest, the people that were spouting these grand gestures that it's going to be this revolution for the fishing industry were not people that I would trust to look after my unborn child when it's born. You know, I just wouldn't trust them at all. And I could see that it was just empty slogans, and that's ultimately it. It's empty slogans they were using for this adulation and for votes. But there was no practical procedure behind it. There was nothing pragmatic about what they were saying, because as an industry, as me, as a very small part of a very big pond, excuse the pun, you know, I could even see the issues that were going to hit us hard, and I thought, well, if I can see these issues, and I'm by no means an expert on trade, and I'm no means an expert on the intricacies involved in getting a trade agreement, I saw the issues that were going to come ahead. So I thought, right, we've got to be prepared for this. And so for the past 3 years, I've been scaling back our trade with Europe and trying to increase our domestic market. But I'm lucky in the sense that I have depuration facilities to be able to do that. Other people aren't so lucky. They were literally, if we don't have Europe, we've got nothing, and that's the problem. And it was never addressed.
So when, and this document, you'll be more familiar than it with I am, but it's pretty unequivocal. The EU Commission has indicated that depurated LBMs from Class B waters cannot be imported from Great Britain into the EU. Now, I think I've dated that to March 2019. How do you process the Secretary of State this week saying this?
We had actually discussed it with the Commission. And the Commission had told us the trade could continue.
Are they just making it up then?
Yes, they told us the type of export health certificate that could be used, and their own both public health and animal health laws do provide for the trade to continue. What happened is that the Commission decided, and this was a late decision, that they only took on the first week of February, that they were actually going to change their mind and not allow that trade to continue after all.
So he's saying that you've been wasting your time and money getting ready for a thing that was only came into play on the beginning of February.
Well, I'm just a bit flabbergasted by it, to be honest, because from what he's saying is that ultimately they were just saying to each other, oh, this will be okay, but nothing was written down. So, you know, it's surely if it's, I mean, they made it out that fishing was the massive area of Brexit it was almost like their campaign slogan. Surely they would have got every single minute detail sorted for that, as opposed to just saying, oh, we spoke about it, it's going to be fine. I mean, that to me is nonsense. And I let's be honest, I honestly believe that's a lie. So.
Okay. Eighth generation. How many greats is that? What was your? Who set it up? Great
grandfather.
How many?
Fifth great grandfather.
Great granddad.
Yeah.
And you're going to be all right.
We still walk across the same bit of mud that he walked across in the 1700s, picking up oysters. It's a wonderful.
Can I come and see you one day when all this is over? I'd love to have a look at what you do. Would that be all right?
For a boat trip.
That would be absolute. I'm so late for the break, Tom. I'm so grateful to you for your time, and I'll retweet all the available information. But I just find that so magical. I really do. And I'm so sorry for what your whole trade is going through. If only someone had, warned your colleagues and competitors, eh? There's still a couple of people out there, I presume these are now jokes, right? Saying, ha, 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 I love it, I love Brexit because it's upset James. Mate, we're talking about fishermen going bankrupt. You literally voted to make their lives better. And so I look, either you are yanking my chain or you're in need of serious help, and I am not qualified to give it. Back to vaccinations in schools, testing rather in schools. Quick call from Dominic in Windsor, and then it's Theo time. Dominic, what would you like to say?
James, hi. I'm just calling up to offer some hope to the people that are trying to, or the schools that are trying to push out these new testing regimes. Last year, I'm in the film industry, and when the film industry went down, my company was asked to supply some staff in the testing program at the driving centres. So the whole of the film industry, because they were all self-employed and not helped by the government, came and helped. So last summer we had cameramen, we had all everyone in the film industry helping in the testing program. Now, what's happened from that is when the government announced that they wanted to have a walk-in centre within 30 minutes of everybody, I was asked to set up a mobilisation team to go out and make these centres happen. And it would start off on a Monday with a recce. By the Tuesday, we were there building it. By the Wednesday, we were training the staff. By Wednesday afternoon, we were piloting and delivering tests and up to 200 to 300 a day in a local test site. And we were doing these every day for the last 3 or 4 months. So it is possible to do it in a very short space of time. They just need to have access to the information on how it's done, because they must
and the bodies as well, and the personnel.
And the bodies, and there are people out there. Everyone wants to help in this pandemic, and there's
That's
people
true.
out there.
The vaccination programme has relied very heavily on volunteers. I'm trying to get to the bottom of how heavily, just that more out of curiosity than anything else. But I don't know. I mean, you'd need all sorts of. You wouldn't be allowed in a school, quite rightly, without various checks and balances that wouldn't apply to a
DBS check.
Wouldn't apply to a film set.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the infrastructure is there. People know how to put it in. If I was a school teacher and I was asked to do that, I'd have no idea what to do.
That's true. Who's the most famous person you tested?
So I can't say.
Why not?
I can't say.
Oh, come on.
Because it wouldn't be right.
Why not?
No, you can't share information.
If I'll just say famous actors, and then you'll make a noise to establish whether or not you're being evasive or not.
I'm not going to answer it. No, I can't do that. But the advice is there. If this is not a commercial proposition, if anyone wants to talk to me about how
I can't do. I don't know if I can do that. By all means, have a quick chat with the producer if anybody wants any sort of logistical guidance. But I certainly can't put you in direct contact with each other for all manner of reasons that I know you fully understand.